Tell me why I shouldn't kill you right now. You know who I am. You know what I do to people who touch my family.
I didn't touch your family to hurt them. I touched your daughter to save her.
Tell me why I shouldn't kill you right now. You know who I am. You know what I do to people who touch my family. I didn't touch your family to hurt them. I touched your daughter to save her. And if you're half the man the newspapers say you are, you'll put that gun away and look at the color of her lips. Look at her pupils. She isn't tired, Mr. Jang. She's fading. You're a waitress. You pour water and clear plates. What would you know about medical symptoms? I was a nurse in Lagos for 5 years before I came to this freezing city. I've treated gunshot wounds, malaria, and overdoses in the back of a triage truck while generators failed. So when I tell you that your fiancé just tried to stop your daughter's heart with a digitalis cocktail disguised as seasoning, you better believe I know exactly what I am talking about. This is a story of how one split-second decision changed the balance of power in the criminal underworld. It is a story about how love can bloom in the coldest of places and how sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is care. If you want to see how a waitress brought a king to his knees, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. And let me know in the comments, would you have risked your life to save a stranger's child? Drop a yes if you're brave, or a no if you're smart. Let's begin. The air in the Gilded Lily was always kept at a precise 68 degrees. It was a temperature designed to preserve the expensive floral arrangements imported from Holland and to keep the guests in their heavy suits and evening gowns comfortable. But for Felicia Ade, the cold was a constant physical assault. It seeped through the thin fabric of her black uniform, settled into her bones, and made her ache for the humid, chaotic heat of Lagos. Felicia was 26 years old. In Nigeria, she had been respected. She had walked the wards of a busy hospital, her white uniform crisp, her decisions life-saving. Here, in Chicago, she was invisible. That was the job description. Be a shadow. Be a pair of hands pouring vintage Cabernet. Be a ghost gliding over plush carpets, refilling water glasses before the guests even realized they were empty. Her feet throbbed in her cheap black shoes. Her bank account was hovering in the red, a constant source of anxiety that sat in her stomach like a stone. Her nursing degree, the paper that proved she was intelligent and capable, was currently worth nothing to the state of Illinois. So she carried trays. She wiped tables. She swallowed her pride every single shift because the rent was due and her little brother back home needed school fees. Table 4 needs water. Table 7 wants the check. Move faster, Felicia. Don't look the guests in the eye. Felicia, you are furniture. You are ambience. You are nothing. But invisibility has a limit, and that limit was breached the moment the atmosphere in the restaurant shifted. It wasn't a sound. It was a pressure change. The air grew heavier, sharper. The ambient chatter of Chicago's elite died down, not to a respectful hush, but to the suffocating silence of fear. The doors opened, and Min-Ho Jang walked in. He didn't just walk. He cut through the room like a blade. He was tall, dressed in a charcoal suit that fit him with the precision of armor. His features were sharp, angular, carved from granite and ice. He was head of the Jang Syndicate, a man whose name was whispered in fear from the shipping docks to the corporate boardrooms. On his arm was Unipark. She was beautiful in the way a diamond is beautiful. Cold, hard, sharp enough to cut you if you held her wrong. She wore a dress that shimmered like liquid silver and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And trailing behind them, looking like a porcelain doll that had been dropped and glued back together, was a little girl, Suji, maybe 6 years old. She wore a velvet dress that looked itchy and uncomfortable. She stared at the floor, her small hand gripping the fabric of her skirt, so hard her knuckles were white. Felicia felt a pull in her chest the moment she saw the child. It was a nurse in her, the instinct that spotted trauma from across a crowded triage room. The girl wasn't just shy. She wasn't just well-behaved. She was petrified. She moved like someone who was afraid that breathing too loud would result in punishment. Table 1, Felicia, the manager, Mr. Henderson, was suddenly beside her, his face pale and sweating. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not make eye contact. And for the love of God, do not mess this up. If you spill a single drop of water, you are fired before it hits the carpet. Felicia took the water pitcher. Her hands were steady. They were surgeon's hands, wasted on ice water. She approached the table. The tension radiating from the group was palpable. It tasted metallic. Minho sat with his back to the wall, his eyes scanning the room, checking exits, checking faces, before finally settling on his daughter. Eat, Suji. His voice was deep, smooth, and completely devoid of warmth. It wasn't cruel. It was just hollow, like an echo in an empty room. The little girl shook her head slightly. A micro-movement. She's being difficult again. Yuna sighed, checking her reflection in the back of a spoon. Honestly, Minho, she's an embarrassment. Tonight is the merger dinner. If she acts up in front of the elders, it makes us look weak. She won't. Minho looked up. His eyes landed on Felicia's chest, on her name tag, but he didn't see her. Water. No ice. Felicia poured. She noticed Suji flinch when the pitcher approached. It was a reflex, a trauma response. Felicia paused, blocking her body from the view of the adults, and offered the girl a quick, warm wink. Suji blinked. Her dark eyes widened. It was a tiny connection, a thread of humanity in a frozen sea. I ordered the soup for her. Yuna snapped her fingers. Bring it. Felicia went to the kitchen. Her heart was beating a little faster than usual. She didn't like this. She didn't like the way the woman looked at the child. She didn't like the dead look in the father's eyes. But she was a waitress. It wasn't her business. She brought the bowls. A creamy pumpkin bisque, rich and orange. She set one before Yuna, one before Minho, and the smaller bowl before Suji. As Felicia stepped back to the service station, she watched. It was a habit she couldn't break. Monitoring her patients, monitoring her tables. Minho turned away to answer a vibrating phone, his attention momentarily diverted by business. He was speaking rapid Korean, his brow furrowed. That was when Felicia saw it. Yuna reached into her clutch. It was a fluid motion, practice, sleek, like a magician's sleight of hand. She produced a small silver vial. With a quick glance at Minho's turned back, she uncapped it and tipped a generous amount of clear liquid into Suji's soup. She stirred it with a swift flick of her wrist, the silver spoon clinking softly against the china. Then, she smiled at the little girl, a smile that looked like a shark baring its teeth. Eat up, darling. Yuna cooed. It will make you feel restful. Suji lifted the spoon. Her hand was trembling. She looked at her father, but he was deep in conversation, arguing about shipping routes. She looked at Yuna, who nodded encouragingly, her eyes glittering with malice. Suji opened her mouth. The world narrowed to that spoon. Felicia didn't think about her rent. She didn't think about her visa status. She didn't think about the fact that Minho Jang was rumored to have buried men in concrete foundations for looking at him wrong. She thought of her oath, do no harm, and the corollary that every nurse knew, prevent harm whenever possible. No, the scream tore through the restaurant. It was raw, guttural, and loud. It shattered the carefully cultivated atmosphere of the Gilded Lily, like a brick through a window. Felicia lunged. She didn't run. She flew. As Suji's lips touched the metal of the spoon, Felicia's hand slapped the bowl. Crash! The bisque exploded. Orange liquid splattered across the white tablecloth. It soaked the velvet dress. It splashed onto Minho's charcoal suit. The bowl shattered on the floor, sending shards of china skittering across the marble. The silence that followed was heavier than anything Felicia had ever felt. It was the silence of a bomb that had just armed itself. Minho stood up slowly. He dropped his phone. He didn't look at the mess. He looked at Felicia. His hand moved inside his jacket. A reflex. A threat. The entire restaurant seemed to stop breathing. Even the kitchen noise ceased. What? Minho's voice was a low rumble of thunder. Did you just do? Henderson was already there, pale and shaking, practically vibrating with terror. Mr. Jang, I am so sorry. She's fired. She's crazy. I'll call the police right now. She put something in it. Felicia shouted, her chest heaving. She pointed a shaking finger at Yuna. I saw her. She took a vial from her purse and put it in the child's soup while you weren't looking. Yuna gasped, clutching her pearls in a performance worthy an Academy Award. You lying, clumsy cow. How dare you? I was seasoning it. She's delusional, Minho. Look at her. She attacked your daughter. Minho's eyes were black voids. He looked at Felicia, then at Yuna, then at the shivering child covered in soup. Is this true? He asked Yuna. Of course not. I would never. Minho held up a hand. He looked at the spilled soup on the tablecloth. He dipped his finger into a puddle of it. He brought it to his nose and sniffed. Then, very carefully, he touched the tip of his tongue to it. He froze. For a second, Felicia thought he was going to kill her. His body went rigid, like a statue. The air around him seemed to drop another 10 degrees. His jaw tightened so hard Felicia could see the muscle jump. He turned to Yuna. Ketamine, he whispered, and digitalis. Yuna's face drained of color. The mask slipped. For the first time, she looked afraid. Minho, she's been so anxious. I just wanted her to sleep through the dinner. Digitalis stops the heart, Yuna. Minho's voice wasn't loud. It was terrifyingly soft. You weren't putting her to sleep. You were putting her down. Suji began to cry. A silent, heaving sob that shook her tiny frame. Minho moved. It was a blur of violence. He grabbed Yuna by the throat, lifting her out her chair. His security detail materialized from the shadows, weapons drawn, not on Felicia, but surrounding the table to block the view of the other diners. Get her out of my sight. Minho snarled, shoving Yuna into the arms of a massive guard. Before I forget that we are in public. Yuna was dragged away, kicking and screaming about contracts and alliances and family honor. Minho stood there, breathing hard. He looked down at his daughter. He looked terrified. He reached out to touch her, to comfort her, but Suji flinched, shrinking away from him. The pain on Minho's face was visceral. He was the most powerful man in the city, and he couldn't comfort his own child. He looked at his hands like they were traitors. He turned to Felicia. She was trembling, waiting to be arrested or shot or fired. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the cold reality of what she had just done. You saw, he said. I saw. Felicia whispered. You knew who I was, and you intervened anyway. She's a child. Felicia said, her voice finding its steel. It was the same voice she used on stubborn doctors in Lagos. I don't care who you are. She's a child, and she was crying for help without making a sound. Minho studied her. He looked at her cheap uniform, her worn shoes, the fire in her eyes. He reached into his jacket. Henderson squeaked, looking like he might faint. But Minho didn't pull out a gun. He pulled out a silk handkerchief. He stepped forward and, with surprising gentleness, wiped a smear of pumpkin soup from Felicia's cheek. Clean yourself up, he said. My driver is outside. You're coming with us. I can't. I have work. I have a life. Mr. Henderson. Minho said, without looking at the manager, this woman no longer works for you. If you speak of tonight, your establishment burns tomorrow. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir. Good luck, Felicia. Minho scooped Suji up into his arms. She was stiff as a board, her eyes squeezed shut. Come, he said to Felicia. It wasn't a request. It was an order. The ride in the black SUV was silent. The city lights blurred past the tinted windows, streaks of gold and red against the rainy night. Felicia sat on the plush leather seat, hugging her cardigan around herself. She felt like she had been kidnapped by aliens. The man next to her radiated danger. He was checking his phone, sending messages that Felicia suspected were orders for violence. Suji sat between them, staring at her knees. She smelled of pumpkin soup and expensive shampoo. The car pulled up to a building that looked more like a fortress than a home. Glass and steel rising into clouds overlooking Lake Michigan. The doorman didn't ask for names. He just opened the door. The penthouse elevator opened directly into the living room. It was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Italian leather furniture. Modern art that probably cost more than the hospital Felicia used to work in. It was also sterile. Cold. Completely devoid of life. No toys. No photos. No warmth. Minho poured a drink at the wet bar. His hand shook slightly. It was the only sign that the evening had rattled him. He downed the amber liquid in one swallow and turned to face her. Why? He asked. Why what? Why save her? Yuna was the daughter of the Park clan. Crossing her is a death sentence. Crossing me is usually worse. You risked your life for a stranger. I told you, I'm a nurse. Or I was. In Nigeria, we don't watch people die. We stop it. Minho took a long breath. A nurse. He looked at Suji, who had climbed onto a white modernist sofa and was staring at the wall. She hasn't spoken in 6 months, since her mother died. And now, he ran a hand through his hair, messing up the perfect styling. I nearly let that woman kill her. I was marrying her to secure a territory truce, and she tried to kill my daughter right in front of me. She was jealous, Felicia observed, and cruel. She was an assassin, Minho corrected, and I was blind. He walked over to Felicia. Up close, the danger radiating off him was mixed with an exhausting weariness. He smelled of expensive scotch, gunpowder, and rain. I cannot trust anyone, he said. My staff, my guards, they are all loyal to the pay or to the alliance. Yuna has infiltrated my household. If she could poison the soup, she could have poisoned anything. Her milk, her water, her toothpaste. He looked Felicia dead in the eye. I need you. Felicia blinked. Excuse me? You risked your life for Suji with nothing to gain. That makes you the only person in this city I can trust with her. I want you to watch her, feed her, ensure she survives until I can dismantle the Park clan. I'm not a bodyguard. I'm a waitress. You are a nurse and a protector. He pulled a checkbook from his jacket. Name your price. Double it. Triple it. I don't care. Just keep her alive. Felicia looked at the checkbook. She thought about her brother's school fees. She thought about her rent. She thought about the holes in her shoes. Then she looked at Suji. The little girl looked so small in that big, empty room. Her stomach gave a loud rumble that echoed in the silence. Felicia sighed. Put your money away. Minho paused, his pen hovering over the check. You refuse? I don't want your blood money. But look at her. She's starving. And she's terrified. Felicia rolled up the sleeves of her cardigan. Where is your kitchen? The kitchen was a chef's dream, equipped with appliances that had never been used. The refrigerator was stocked with bottled water, expensive champagne, and nothing else. No vegetables. No fruit. No life. Felicia raided the pantry. She found rice. She found tomato paste. She found spices that had gathered dust. Minho stood in the doorway, watching her. He had taken off his jacket and rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms that were covered in tattoos. Dragons and tigers warring on his skin. He looked out of place in his own home. What are you making? He asked. Jollof rice. Felicia said, or as close as I can get with these ingredients. It's comfort food. Where I come from, it solves everything. Does it solve assassination attempts? It helps. 30 minutes later, the sterile penthouse smelled different. It smelled of thyme, ginger, and warmth. It smelled like a home. Suji crept into the kitchen. She didn't look at her father. She looked at the pot. Felicia dished out a small bowl. She sat on the floor, crossing her legs. She patted the spot next to her. Come here, little one. Suji hesitated. She looked at Minho. He nodded, a barely perceptible movement. Suji sat next to Felicia. Felicia took a bite of the rice. Good. Safe. She offered the spoon to Suji. The girl took it. She sniffed it. Then she ate, and she kept eating. She ate like she hadn't tasted real food in months. Minho watched from the doorway. He felt a lump form in his throat. He had provided the roof, the security, the money, but this woman, this stranger with eyes like warm honey and a spine of steel, had provided the one thing he couldn't buy. Safety. That night, Felicia slept in the guest room. She locked the door, pushed a chair under the handle, and didn't sleep a wink. The arrangement was supposed to be temporary. A few days while Minho purged his organization of spies. But a few days turned into weeks. Felicia took over the penthouse. She didn't just inhabit it. She changed the temperature. She brought in color. She went to market and came back with bright fabrics, with fresh vegetables, with flowers that weren't white lilies. Suji was a ghost at first. She wouldn't eat unless Felicia tasted it first. She wouldn't sleep unless Felicia sat in the chair by the door. But slowly, the ice began to melt. One rainy Tuesday, 3 weeks in, Felicia was making puff puffs. The smell of yeast and sugar filled the air. Suji crept into the kitchen, clutching a stuffed rabbit Felicia had bought her. "Do you want to help?" Felicia asked softly, not looking up from the dough. Suji hesitated, then dragged a stool over. Felicia showed her how to shape the dough. It was messy. Flour got everywhere. On the counter, on the floor, on Suji's nose. For the first time, a tiny, rusty sound escaped the girl. A giggle. It was quiet, but in that silent house, it sounded like a symphony. Minho had been standing in the doorway for 10 minutes, watching. He felt like an intruder in his own life. He watched the way Felicia's hands moved, gentle and sure. He watched the way his daughter leaned into her side. He felt a pull in his chest that terrified him more than any gun ever had. That night, after Suji was asleep, Minho found Felicia on the balcony. She was looking out at the city lights, wrapped in a blanket. She laughed today, he said, joining her at the railing. She did. She has a beautiful laugh. Felicia didn't look at him. She was watching the traffic below. Minho gripped the railing. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to thank me. She's easy to love." Minho turned to look at her. The wind whipped Felicia's dark curls around her face. She wasn't wearing a uniform anymore, just jeans and a soft sweater. She looked radiant. She looked real. "And you?" Minho asked, his voice dropping an octave. "Are you easy to love?" Felicia's breath hitched. She turned to face him. "Minho, don't." "Why not?" He stepped closer. The magnetic pull between them had been growing, a slow building pressure that made the air in the penthouse feel thick. "You live in my house. You care for my daughter. You argue with me when I work too late. You feed me spicy stew that burns my tongue and makes me feel alive for the first time in years. I'm the help," Felicia said, though her voice lacked conviction. "And you're the king of Chicago." "I am a man," he said. He reached out, his fingers grazing her jawline. His skin was rough, callous from violence, but his touch was reverent. A man who is tired of being cold. He kissed her. It wasn't like the movies. It wasn't soft or tentative. It was desperate. It tasted of longing and fear and the sudden, crashing realization that they were both drowning and had found a raft in each other. Felicia melted into him. For a moment, the danger of his world didn't matter. There was just the heat of his body, the strength of his arms, and the scent of rain and cedar. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Minho rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he whispered. "Not for the job, not for the safety. For me, for us. I'm scared." Felicia admitted. "Your world, it eats people. Then I will break the teeth of the world before I let it touch you. But promises made in the dark are hard to keep in the light." Felicia taught Suji games, not just tag or hide and seek. She taught her nurse games, safety games. "Okay, Suji." Felicia sat on the floor of the living room. "What do we do if a stranger tries to grab us?" Suji looked serious. "We scream. Good. And if they pick us up? If they are big and strong?" Suji frowned. "I don't know. We become a sack of potatoes." Felicia smiled. "We become dead weight. Like this." Felicia stood up and suddenly let her body go completely limp, collapsing onto the rug. It was heavy, awkward, and impossible to hold on to. Suji giggled. "You try," Felicia said. Suji practiced. She practiced going limp. She practiced dropping. It became their secret game. Dead weight. Drop. Minho watched from his office, a small smile playing on his lips. He didn't know that Felicia was arming his daughter. He didn't know that this game would soon be the only thing standing between life and death, because happiness in Minho's world was a signal flare for tragedy. 2 months later, the Park clan struck back. It happened on a Sunday. Min-ho was at a sit-down with the rival heads, trying to negotiate the peace he had promised Felicia. Felicia and Soo-ji were at the park. It was a rare sunny day in Chicago. They were eating ice cream. 4 of Min-ho's best guards were positioned around the perimeter, watching the exits. But the Park clan didn't care about perimeters. The attack was precise, brutal. A black van screeched onto the curb, mounting the sidewalk. Flashbangs detonated, turning the sunny afternoon into a blinding white nightmare. Gunfire erupted. The Sunday crowd screamed and scattered. Felicia didn't think. She grabbed Soo-ji and threw them both behind a concrete planter. "Stay down." Felicia screamed, covering the girl's body with her own. A man in a tactical mask rounded the planter. He held a gun, but he didn't fire. He wasn't there to kill. He was there to take. He grabbed Soo-ji's arm. "No." Felicia roared. She lunged at him. She had no weapon, only her teeth and her rage. She bit him. She sank her teeth into his wrist until she tasted copper. The man howled. He backhanded her with a pistol, a brutal, heavy blow. Pain exploded in Felicia's skull. The world went gray. She fell back, her vision swimming. She saw Soo-ji being dragged away, kicking and screaming. "AMA! AMA!" Soo-ji shrieked, using the Nigerian word for mother that Felicia had taught her playfully. "No." Felicia clawed the pavement, her fingernails breaking against the stone. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't work. The van door slammed. Tires squealed. And then silence. Felicia woke up in a hospital room. The lights were too bright. Her head felt like it had been split open with an axe. She blinked, trying to focus. Min-ho was standing by the window. He looked like a reaper. He was wearing the same suit from the morning, but now it was rumpled. His eyes were red-rimmed. His soul seemed to have evacuated his body, leaving behind a husk of rage and grief. He turned when she stirred. "I failed you," he said. His voice was cracked. "I promised to protect you. I failed." Felicia tried to sit up. She groaned as her broken ribs protested. "Where's she?" Min-ho didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence said everything. "Yuna has her," he said finally. "They want the shipping routes. They want the territory. They want me to kneel." Felicia gripped the bedsheets. Tears blurred her vision, hot and stinging. "Find her," she rasped. Her voice was weak, but her eyes were burning. "Don't you dare give up, Min-ho. Don't you dare mourn her yet. Find our girl. Our girl." That phrase seemed to ignite something in Min-ho's chest. A nuclear reactor coming online. He stood straighter. The Reaper vanished, replaced by the Warlord. "I will burn them all," he promised. He walked to the bed. He kissed her forehead, his lips cool against her feverish skin. "Rest, Felicia. When you wake up, she will be here." He turned and walked out of the room. And Felicia knew, with absolute certainty, that Chicago was about to bleed. Min-ho tore the city apart. He didn't sleep. He didn't eat. He turned the underworld into a war zone. Warehouses belonging to the Park clan burned in the night. Lieutenants disappeared from their homes. Information was extracted with a brutality that made even his own men look away. He was looking for a needle in a haystack of needles. And then he got the call. The shipping yards. "Midnight. Come alone, or we send her back to you in pieces." Min-ho loaded his gun. He put on his coat. He looked at himself in the mirror. He didn't see a businessman. He didn't see a father. He saw a monster. And for tonight, that was exactly what he needed to be. The shipping yards were a maze of rusted metal and deep shadows. The wind howled off the lake, carrying the scent of oil and dead fish. Rain lashed down in sheets, turning the ground to mud. Min-ho walked into the center of the clearing. He was alone, or so it seemed. Yuna stood by a red shipping container. She looked different. The polished socialite was gone. She wore combat gear. A scar ran down her cheek, a souvenir from the night at the restaurant. She was holding Soo-ji. The little girl was gaunt. Her dress was torn. She was shivering violently. A gun was pressed to her temple. "Look at you. Yuna laughed. Her voice was shrill over the wind. The great Minho Jang, brought low by a brat and a waitress. Minho stopped 10 yards away. His coat billowed around him. Let her go, Yuna, and I will let you live. You are in no position to negotiate. Yuna shrieked. Sign the papers. Give us the north side. Give us the routes. Or I paint this container with her brains. Minho held up a folder. He took a step forward. Suji looked at him. Her eyes were wide, terrified. She looked at her father, waiting for him to save her. Minho's eyes locked onto his daughters. He ignored the gun. He ignored Yuna. He spoke directly to Suji. Nia isn't just a waitress. He shouted, his voice cutting through the wind. Yuna frowned, confused. What? She taught you things, Suji. Minho yelled. She taught you recipes. She taught you songs. Suji's eyes flickered. She remembered, and she taught you how to be brave. Minho roared. Suji's body went rigid. She understood. Dead weight. Drop. Suji went limp, completely boneless. Yuna, expecting resistance, expecting the child to pull away or struggle, stumbled under the sudden dead weight. Her arm jerked down. Her grip loosened for a fraction of a second as she tried to compensate. That was all Minho needed. Bang. He didn't hesitate. The shot was impossible. 50 feet. Wind. Rain. Low light. A moving target holding a child. But he didn't miss. The bullet took Yuna in the shoulder, spinning her around. She dropped the gun with a scream. Suji scrambled away, crawling under the shipping container into the mud. Now, Minho roared. The shadows came alive. Minho had arrived alone, but he hadn't come alone. His men, who had infiltrated the yard hours ago by swimming under the freezing docks, swarmed over the railing. It was chaos. It was war. Minho didn't fight. He ran. He sprinted through the gunfire, sliding into the mud, sliding under the container. He gathered Suji into his arms, shielding her head, curling his body around hers as bullets pinged off the metal above them. Appa! Suji sobbed into his chest. I've got you, he chanted. I've got you. I've got you. When the shooting stopped, the Park clan was no more. The police would call it gang war. The papers would call it a tragedy. But in the mud under that container, holding his shaking daughter, Minho called a beginning. Felicia was discharged 3 days later. She went back to her tiny apartment. The heater was broken. It was freezing. She sat on her bed, holding her ribs, her heart heavy. She assumed it was over. The war was done. Minho had his daughter back. He didn't need the waitress anymore. It had been a beautiful, terrifying dream, a glimpse into a life she could never truly have. She was packing her few belongings into a suitcase. She planned to move, maybe to another city, maybe back to Lagos, anywhere that didn't remind her of dragon tattoos and puff-puffs. A knock came at the door. Felicia froze. She wasn't expecting anyone. She walked to the door, wincing with every step. She opened it. Minho was standing there. He had a black eye. His arm was in a sling. He looked battered. He looked exhausted. He looked perfect. Behind him stood Suji. She was holding a plastic Tupperware container. We are hungry, Suji said. Her voice was clear and strong. Felicia looked at them. She looked past them into the hallway. It was filled with Minho's guards. But they weren't holding guns. They were awkwardly holding bouquets of flowers, boxes of chocolates. You can't just show up here, Felicia said, tears pricking her eyes. I'm nobody, Minho. I'm just... You are the woman who screamed. Minho said, stepping into the doorway. You are the woman who saved us. Twice. He took her uninjured hand. I have dissolved the council. He said, I am legitimizing the business. It will take time. It will be dangerous. I will no longer be a king. I will just be a CEO. Why? Felicia asked. Because a king cannot marry a queen who rules with kindness. He said, and I intend to marry you. Felicia laughed. It was a watery, choked sound. You haven't even asked me on a proper date. We skipped the dating part. Minho said seriously. We went straight to life-saving and war-making. but I can take you to dinner. Italian? French? Suji tugged on Felicia's shirt. She held up the Tupperware. I made puff puffs. The little girl said proudly. Daddy helped. He burned 3 batches. Felicia opened the container. They were misshapen. They were slightly burnt. They looked absolutely perfect. She looked at Minho. The cold, dangerous boss was gone. In his place was a man looking at her like she was a son. I'd love some puff puffs, Felicia said. She stepped back, opening the door wide. Come inside, she told her family. Let's eat. That should have been the end of it. The rescue, the puff puffs, the quiet dinner in a small apartment that smelled of fried dough and hope. A cinematic fade to black, where the hero gets a girl and the villain is vanquished. But life is not a movie. And when you are a man like Minho Jang, the past does not simply let you walk away because you decided to be a better person. The weeks following the rescue were a blur of painful recovery and terrifying intimacy. Minho moved Felicia and Suji back into the penthouse, not as guests, but as residents. He claimed it was for safety, insisting that the remnants of the Park clan might seek retribution. But Felicia knew the truth. He simply could not breathe if they were not in the room with him. The physical wounds healed. Felicia's ribs knit back together. Minho's shoulder, grazed by a bullet during extraction, scarred over. But the psychological landscape of the penthouse had shifted irrevocably. They were a family in everything but name. They ate breakfast together. Felicia tied Suji's hair in the mornings. Minho returned early from the office, the smell of gunpowder replaced by the scent of expensive cologne and fatigue. Yet there was a hesitation, a line. They hadn't quite crossed since that night at her apartment. Minho treated her with a reverence that was almost frustrating. He looked at her like she was a piece of fine art that might shatter if he held it too tight. He slept in the master bedroom. She slept in the guest suite. One evening, after Suji had fallen asleep reading a story about a brave rabbit, Felicia found Minho in his study. He was staring at a wall of monitors, his face bathed in the blue light of security feeds. You are staring at nothing, Felicia said, leaning against the doorframe. Minho blinked, rubbing his temples. I am staring at threats. Potential threats. The Park clan is gone, Minho. The head is cut off. The body still thrashes. He turned his chair to face her. And now that I am dismantling the syndicate, transitioning to legitimate shipping and logistics, the wolves are circling. They see a moral compass as a weakness. Is it? He looked at her. His eyes traveled over her face, memorizing it. No, it is the only strength that matters. But it makes me vulnerable. It makes you vulnerable. Felicia walked into the room. She bypassed the desk. She bypassed the monitors. She stopped in front of him and took his hand. I have been shot at. I have been beaten. I have bitten a hitman. I think I can handle vulnerable. Minho stood. The air between them crackled, heavy and electric. We're doing this backward. I have moved you in. I have introduced you to my daughter as her mother figure. I have declared war for you. But I have not taken you on a date. I have not courted you. I don't need courting. I need you to stop looking at me like I'm going to break. I look at you like you are the only thing holding me together. He kissed her then. It wasn't the desperate, adrenaline-fueled kiss of the balcony. It was slow, deliberate, a promise made in a quiet room. It was the kiss of a man claiming his future. That night, Felicia didn't go back to the guest room. For a month, life was perfect. It was the kind of happiness that makes you look over your shoulder, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And drop it did. It arrived not in the form of a gunman or a rival gang, but in a chauffeur-driven Rolls-Royce. Felicia was in the kitchen, teaching Suji how to make chin-chin, a crunchy Nigerian snack. The kitchen was a mess of flour and laughter. The elevator chimed. Felicia wiped her hands on her apron, expecting Minho. But the woman who stepped out was not Minho. She was older, perhaps in her 60s, but time had not softened her. It had only sharpened her edges. She wore a traditional hanbok, made of silk that shimmered like oil on water. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, held in place by a jade pin. Her posture was so rigid it looked painful. She surveyed the penthouse with eyes that missed nothing. The toys on the floor, the Nigerian music playing softly from speakers, the flower on the counter, and finally, Felicia. "Who are you?" the woman asked. Her English was flawless, clipped and cold. "I'm Felicia." Felicia stepped forward, shielding Suji instinctively. "And you are?" The woman didn't answer. She walked past Felicia as if she were a piece of furniture that had been placed incorrectly. She looked at Suji. "Grandmother?" Suji whispered, dropping her piece of dough. "Madam Jang, the matriarch of the Jang family, the woman who had built the syndicate alongside her husband, the woman who had trained Minho to be a king." She looked at Suji with a critical eye. "You are messy, and you are fat." Suji shrank back. "She's happy," Felicia snapped, "and she is healthy." Madam Jang turned slowly. Her eyes were like obsidian. "So, you are the help that my son has elevated, the African nurse. I am his partner." "Partner?" Madam Jang tasted the word and spat it out. "In business? No, you have no head for numbers. In strategy? Unlikely. In bed? Perhaps. But do not mistake a warm bed for a seat at the table." Minho walked in then. He must have been alerted by security. He was breathless, his suit jacket unbuttoned. "Mother." "Minho." She didn't hug him. She didn't smile. She gestured to the room. "What is this circus?" "It is my home. It is a playpen. And you are playing house with servant while your empire crumbles." "My empire is evolving. We are going legitimate." "Legitimate." She scoffed. "You are weak." The dismantling of the Park clan was a show of force. "Yes. But since then, you have refused contracts. You have stopped the flow of money from the gray zones. Investors are panicking. The lower bosses are restless. And why? Because of her." She pointed a manicured finger at Felicia. "She has made you soft, Minho. A soft king is a dead king." Felicia watched Minho. She saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw worked. "She is not making me soft." Minho said, his voice low. "She is making me human. And humans die. Kings survive." Madam Jang stepped closer to her son. "I have arranged a meeting with the Choi family. Their daughter is educated. She is Korean. She understands our world. A union would secure the southern ports and calm the investors. I am not interested. You do not have the luxury of interest. You have a duty. To the name. To the legacy. To Suji. Do not bring Suji into this. I am the only one thinking of Suji." Madam Jang's voice rose, cracking the veneer calm. "If you fall, Minho, if your enemies smell this weakness and strike, do you think they will spare the child? Do you think this nurse can protect her when the real wolves come? She got lucky once. Luck runs out." She stared at Felicia. "Leave him," she said. "If you care for him, if you care for that child, leave. Let him do what he must do to survive. Because if you stay, you are painting a target on his back. And on hers. Get out." Minho pointed to the elevator. Madam Jang smoothed her silk skirt. "I will go, but think on my words. The Choi meeting is on Friday. If you are not there, I cannot protect you from the board." She left. The silence she left behind was suffocating. Minho turned to Felicia immediately. "Ignore her. She is old. She is stuck in the past." "Is she wrong?" Felicia asked quietly. "About what?" "About the danger. About me making you vulnerable." Minho grabbed her shoulders. "Listen to me. You are not a liability. You are my life. I don't want the empire if I cannot share it with you." But Felicia saw the fatigue in his eyes. She saw the new gray hairs at his temples. She saw the way he checked his phone every 30 seconds. That night, Felicia lay awake. She looked at the ceiling of the guest room. She thought about Suji's laughter. She thought about Minho's hands. And she thought about the target on their backs. If you love someone, you protect them. Sometimes you protect them with a gun. Sometimes you protect them with a shield. And sometimes, Felicia realized with a breaking heart, you protect them by leaving. The next few days were a masterclass in acting. Felicia smiled. She cooked. She played deadweight with Suji. But inside, she was screaming. Minho was distracted. The pressure from the business was mounting. There were rumors of a coup within the organization, fueled by his mother's whispers. On Thursday, Felicia packed a bag. She waited until Minho left for the office. She waited until Soo-ji was at her private tutoring lesson in the library. She wrote a letter. It was the hardest thing she had ever done. Minho, your mother was cruel, but she wasn't wrong. You are trying to change a world that doesn't want to change, and you are doing it while trying to protect me. You can't do both. Not yet. Soo-ji needs a father who is alive more than she needs a stepmother she has known for 3 months. Save your kingdom. Secure their safety. Do not look for me. I love you. That is why I am going. Felicia, she left a letter on his pillow. She took only what she came with. No jewelry, no money, just her clothes and her broken heart. She walked out of the penthouse, took the service elevator down, and vanished into the gray Chicago afternoon. When Minho came home and found the letter, the sound of his grief was enough to crack the glass of the windows. He roared. He tore the room apart. He called her phone, but it was dead. He called a security team, screaming orders. Find her. Turn the city upside down. But Felicia Ade knew how to be invisible. She had done it for years. She went to the one place he wouldn't look. She went to a shelter on the south side, volunteering her nursing skills in exchange for a cot. She disappeared into the system. For 3 months, they existed in separate hells. Minho became a machine. He attended the meeting with the Choi family. He sat across from the daughter, a perfectly pleasant woman who talked about art history. He felt nothing. He signed the contracts. He secured the ports. He crushed the dissenters in his organization with a ruthlessness that terrified even his mother. He saved his kingdom. But he lost his soul. The penthouse became cold again. Soo-ji stopped laughing. She stopped eating. She sat by the window, clutching her stuffed rabbit, waiting for the door to open. Madame Jang was pleased. Order had been restored. The stock was up. The threats had receded. But one evening, she visited the penthouse. She found Minho sitting in the dark, staring at a plate of cold chin-chin that Soo-ji had tried to make herself. He looked up at his mother. His eyes were empty. Are you happy? He asked. You are safe, she said. That is what matters. I am dead, he said. I am breathing, but I am dead. And Soo-ji is dying. Look at her. Soo-ji was a shadow. She hadn't spoken in weeks. Is this the legacy you wanted? Minho asked. A king of ash? A granddaughter of silence? Madame Jang looked at the child. She looked at her son. For the first time in decades, something cracked in her iron facade. She remembered her own husband. She remembered the day he died, and how the power had tasted like dust in her mouth. She turned and walked out. 2 days later, Felicia was changing a bandage on a homeless man's foot at the shelter when a shadow fell over her. She looked up, expecting the supervisor. It was Yoon, Minho's head of security. He looked uncomfortable in his suit amidst the poverty of the shelter. Miss Ade, he said. Felicia stood, her heart hammering. Is he okay? Is Soo-ji okay? They are alive, Yoon said, but they are not okay. He held out an envelope. It was thick, cream-colored stationery. There's a gala tonight, Yoon said. The Museum of Contemporary Art. Mr. Jang is receiving an award for his philanthropic pivot. The entire city will be there. The Choi family will be there. So, Yoon looked at his shoes. He told me not to look for you. He respected your letter. But his mother, she gave me an address this morning. She said that a king needs a queen, not a merger. Felicia stared at him. The old witch? She said the house is too quiet. Yoon smiled slightly. And she said the chin-chin is terrible without you. Felicia opened the envelope. Inside was a dress. It wasn't silver or cold. It was gold, vibrant, shimmering gold, a color of heat, a color of Legos, and a note. Come home. Felicia didn't think. She didn't hesitate. She went to the bathroom, washed the shelter dust off her face, and put on the dress. The Museum of Contemporary Art was a cathedral of glass and light. The elite of Chicago were there. sipping champagne, whispering about Minho Jang's transformation. Minho stood at the podium. He looked impressive, powerful, and utterly alone. He was giving a speech about community, about change, but his voice was mechanical. He finished. The applause was polite. He stepped down, looking for the nearest exit, looking to escape the suffocating congratulations. And then the crowd parted. It wasn't a ripple. It was a wave. People turned, murmuring, stepping aside. Minho looked up. Felicia stood at the top of the grand staircase. The gold dress caught every light in the room. She looked regal. She looked fierce. She looked like the sun rising after a long, dark winter. Minho froze. The glass in his hand tilted. Champagne spilling onto the floor, unnoticed. Felicia walked down the stairs. Her heels clicked on the marble. She walked past the Choi family. She walked past the board members. She walked past Madame Jang, who stood in the corner, sipping tea. Madame Jang caught Felicia's eye. She didn't smile, but she dipped her head, a single, sharp nod of acknowledgement. A truce. Felicia reached Minho. You found me, she whispered. I never stopped looking. He lied. I just stopped breathing. He reached out and touched her face, as if checking she was real. You left. I thought I was saving you. You didn't save me. You abandoned me to the wolves. I'm back, she said, and I brought a stick to beat the wolves. Minho laughed. It was a sound of pure relief, a sound that startled the nearby socialites. He pulled her into him, wrapping his arms around her waist, burying his face in her neck. He inhaled the scent of her, soap and shea butter and home. He pulled back and looked at the crowd. He looked at the cameras. He looked at the Choi family. I have an announcement, he said, his voice booming without the microphone. The room went silent. This is Felicia Ade. Minho said, she is not a business partner. She is not a political alliance. She is the woman who saved my daughter's life. She is the woman who saved my life. And she is the woman I am going to marry. He looked at Felicia. If she'll have me, if she'll take the risk. Felicia looked at the man who had burned down a city for his daughter. She looked at the man who was trembling in her arms. Yes, she said loud enough for the back of the room to hear. Yes, I'll take the risk. He kissed her. And this time there was no desperation. There was only triumph. 6 months later, the wedding was held not in a cold cathedral, but in a garden. It was a chaotic, beautiful blend of traditions. There was kimchi and jollof rice. There were drums and violins. Suji, wearing a dress that combined bright ochre fabric with Korean silk, ran between the tables, laughing, her mouth stained with icing. Madame Jang sat at the head table. She didn't dance, but she was seen eating a puff-puff. And when Felicia walked down the aisle, Madame Jang was the first to stand. 2 years later, the penthouse was unrecognizable. It was filled with plants. It was filled with toys. And it was filled with the sound of a new cry. Minho sat on the rug, holding a baby boy. Kian, a name that meant God adds in Yoruba and sounded like Kian, meaning strong in Korean. Suji was showing the baby her rabbit. This is Mr. Bun, she explained seriously. He is brave. If bad men come, he goes dead weight. Minho looked up at Felicia, who was resting on the sofa, watching them. We made it, he said softly. We did. Felicia smiled. The world was still dangerous. There were still threats. But they were no longer a king and a waitress fighting alone in the dark. They were a fortress. And Felicia knew, as she watched her husband kiss their son's head, that she would never be invisible again. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that love is stronger than fear, hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that even in the coldest winter, spring eventually comes. And tell me in the comments, what is the bravest thing you've ever done for love? I'll see you in the next story.